Ano ka ha?
There you go. It's for them, Aya.
Okay. Sige lang. May na lang na naku sa data diri. So, sige, unsa man sugod ta? What you guys want to do? How'd you guys want to do this?
Gently.
I don't know. I'm just here.
Open at Bible verses daan di.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Ritas. 1 Corinthians 7 man gid ni ba?
I have that open.
Wow.
No, it's from the list that Aya gave yesterday. I opened them all, but didn't read them.
Okay.
Wait, where is that? You know what? I'm gonna type it here ha. Sa chat.
Yeah.
So we have Matthew 5, we have Matthew 19, Mark 10, Luke 16, 1 Cor 7, and Romans 7. So those are like the big deals. I notice they're all New Testament, huh? Because New Testament lens ba yata?
Yes.
Okay.
Matthew 5. 19, Mark 10, Luke 16, 1 Cor 7.
You know, you guys can just screenshot this.
No, I'm opening all of them.
Okay. Yeah. So for those are you recording just the video or recording the whole screen?
I don't know what Zoom does. I think the entire call.
Okay. Well, it's Matthew 5, Matthew 19, Mark 10, Luke 16, 1 Corinthians 7, and Romans 7. Lisod na ang Romans 7 kay romantic man gid nga topic. Okay. So there are several positions to ask. Position 1, divorce is never allowed no matter what, no matter what. Okay? Second position, divorce is allowed provided the cause is adultery or abandonment by the non-believing partner. Okay? Third, divorce is allowed for other situations in addition to those two, case to case, depending on gravity. A very common example used is domestic violence or physical violence or abuse. And then the follow-up question is remarriage. If a person gets divorced, a Christian gets divorced, may he or she remarry? So some say never. Others say only if the grounds were valid and you're the innocent party. And others say okay lang yun at all because there's repentance and anyone can remarry anytime. Okay, so those are the three views for divorce and another three views for remarriage. So, divorce goes first. Okay, di makaka-discuss og remarriage if you don't first discuss divorce. So who wants to start the ball rolling?
You.
Uy! Go back to the question lagi. Case study. That lady got beat up 3 times, 4th time she was almost gonna die. Her cracked rib pierced her lung and she was supposed to drown in her own with her own blood that entered her lungs. The doctors saved her. So she's asking people in a group chat, fellow Christians who are not part of her church, what she should do. So what advice would you give? Would you say stick to the marriage? Stay with the husband, get beat up, that's persecution.
No.
Okay. Then what? She says she
Me
wants.
first.
Sige, go.
Okay, actually, when I listened to Woody Bocamno, I was really sold out. Like, I was really doing like that. Like, yes, tinood yun. Like, this is real, kanang permanence of marriage. Yun nga view. But when you asked that question, I was like, bitaw, no. Why would I do that? Like, if the husband is really
Ah.
like crazy, I don't want to go back there. Like, nga ba? So now dali ako kastorya. I'm about to change my view on that.
Yeah, same.
I'm sorry, Bonnie.
It's a real situation. This really happened several years ago. And NCC did not exist yet. I was still in GCF. And this lady had a 4-year-old boy. And the husband would threaten na if she doesn't be ultra obedient to him, then basin makulatahan mo threat ba nga makulatahan po ng anak.
Goy.
So like, okay, stay, leave, unsa man.
Flee for your life.
Here's
Di na siya kanang abandonment of an unbelieving partner. Murag,
The husband
oh,
is
muragi.
her. The husband stayed with her and beating her up.
Mm.
It's it's
Pero-
daily. The threat is daily. It's not like once a week. No, it's every day she gets hit, she gets slapped. And then it just gets really bad sometimes.
Here's a question, Kuya. Is separation equivalent to divorce?
Legally, no. Legally. But functionally,
Mm.
legal separation is this. According to the state, you're married. Okay, so you cannot marry someone else because you're still married. But legally, you're separated, meaning you're living in different houses, different places, all of that because of certain situations. Others would say drug addiction, verbal abuse, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, all of that stuff, psychological incapacity, etc. So you're married, but you're not living together.
Hmm.
So functionally, is that a marriage?
No. Dysfunctional.
Okay. So those are some questions you have to ask. I mean, the law provides us with options, but again, we're Christians. So what does the Bible say and how do we deal with this?
Yeah.
Sige, go.
Okay, I'm just gonna go with the 1 Corinthians 7 nga kanang passage and then see if it holds water. So in that situation, the reason why I asked about separation is because even though like regardless if the guy is a believer or unbeliever, he is acting as an unbeliever, but he does consent to live with her. So it says here that she should not divorce him. But then at the same time, when I asked if divorce is equivalent to separation, like I'm thinking you have to separate yourself. Yan na ba to? So yes, it's not like the functional marriage, but I guess I'm operating in the idea of what does God say explicitly about the situation. Yan na ba to? Like like siguro if I were in her position, my concern would be less about if I would be able to remarry again, if technically the law would not allow me to have another guy, but more on like muna man akong situation, how do I honor God in this way? Ano ba to?
Okay. Look at the word consent.
Yeah.
So the rest I say, not I, not the Lord. Okay. So Paul is already saying something there. That's a hint. I, not the Lord. Okay. If any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. What does the word consent mean? Does it mean I'm so happy to stay with you and your Christian faith? Or is it more like, I don't like that you're a Christian, pero okay, fine. Sige, fine. What's the tone there? The unbeliever says, sige, fine. I live with you and your faith, you and your Yahweh God. That's the tone.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. So, if he's fine with it, sige na lang, then okay. But it's a working marriage. Still a working marriage. They're trying to work things out. That's the implication here. Right?
Okay.
And if you look at the succeeding verses ba,
Yeah.
especially verse 16 ba, that I think what Paul is kinang trying to kinang make a point is that let the unbelieving partner stay, because 16 is the objective or the purpose,
Mm.
no. It's a salvation of the other partner.
Mm.
So why don't kung if we try to paraphrase that one ba, if your unbelieving partner wants to stay with you, why would you not allow it?
Mm.
You don't know nga in that kanang arrangement basta day masalbar pa imong partner, imong asawa, imong bana, diba? So he was actually kinang asking a rhetorical question nga, it's possible that the arrangement, although it's not ideal because it's kinang unequally yoking actually, maybe it's a kinang a venue or a vehicle that will pave the way for the salvation of the partner, because in verse 14 it says nga, for the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife,
Mm.
and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband, otherwise your children will be unclean as it is. So it points towards verse 16, for how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? How do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? So I guess that's the kinang murag the rationale why Paul is still allowing that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Actually, that gives me an idea also, because verse 15 would say, if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. So I think, like, in the case of the guy beating his wife, like
There's the peace.
that kind of like that already kind of says that the unbelieving partner is separate. Like he treats her not as his own body but as a separate punching bag. Ano ba to?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that said, it's okay for her to separate physically, even though that would make for a very dysfunctional marriage. But kana lang, like you don't have to enslave yourself na magpa-abuse ka, but the question still remains, if is that divorce? Does God say, okay, divorce him?
But mo lagi na, what is divorce? Functionally, divorce is you end the marriage. Essentially, it's not the marriage never happened. It's the marriage did happen, and now it's ended.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's take a look at another one. Still in 1 Corinthians 7, it says, "Do not deprive one another." Verse 3, have verse 3. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. So imagine people are married, but one partner says, zero, I don't want that, the physical side. No. Is that a functioning marriage?
Repentance.
Yeah, nabanggit siya.
Dagay kinang kinang true story gid ana, bro. This is really a true story, no. College pa me, there was another classmate na mo, puro na sila Chinese ba. They were kinang uyab na sila since kinang I think sugod pa lang sa college ba. And then after graduation, they still go on, and then sige na sila away. As in kinang marabag cat and dog ba, magsig-away niya even during classes na mo, mag-away ni sila, nahimo na silang butt of jokes sa mga sa mga kabatch ba. There was a time nga nagminyo gid sila. Pag minyo nila, Sacred Heart pa to, very kinang extravagant na marriage. After a few months na balaan na mo nga nag anal sa kasal. It's because for some reason the wife doesn't want to consummate the marriage basically. So the guy was so upset, suko kay siya. Ngano man nga that's the purpose of marriage is to have kanang consummation with it. Well, dili gud ang babae because I don't know for some reason dili siya ganahan nga dugay na sila uyab gud. Na gyud gianal ang kasal nila here in Cebu. The marriage was in Cebu. So naminyog lain ang lalaki, nagkaanak sila tapos ang babae to sa Japan, naminyog pud siya dito nagkaanak pud. But in the first marriage, wala gyud work na.
Yeah, that happens good. And legally, according to our law, you can annul a marriage if it's not consummated physically.
Yeah, because that constitute a kinang psychological incapacity.
Yeah. So these texts, you see what, if you understand what marriage is for and the purpose of it and what God designed it to be, would you say to a person to stick in a marriage which you know is not functioning the way God designed it to function? That's the big question, Manggod. Because if you read the text, it doesn't necessarily say, here are the reasons for when you can divorce. Here are the reasons when you should not. There's no list. It's just, here's marriage. Here's how it's supposed to work. And if it doesn't work a certain way, then what are we to do? And that's where we go to scripture. So here he says, if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. So what constitutes separate? 1 month away, 2 months, 5 months, 1 year, 7 years? Punching bag, no consummation. What constitutes separates? If the guy says, I'm willing to consent to live with you, dear wife, pero na ako'y tulong akabit. But I'm okay to stay with you. What ka ba? Mas-save ko. But he consents. Do we then say, ni consent man siya? So, okay, choice wife, stay ka.
You know what? Equivalent raman ang murder in the heart and murder nga murder. So,
So if i-murder siya sa heart, meaning patay na siya. So wala na siya sa law. Di na siya under contract. Kaya patay naman.
So what do we do with that? I'm willing to live with you. I consent to live with you because I finally have a human punching bag to vent my anger. So of course I will consent to live with you.
I hate that guy.
But the word consent, is that how we're supposed to use it?
The wife should say, I did not sign up for this. I resign.
Breach of contract. Breach of contract.
That's so hard.
Diba? And look at verse 15, ha? If the unbelieving partner separates, and that's a question, diba, how you define that, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. Why use this word? And then he continues, God has called you to what? To?
Peace.
Peace. So, God desires for believers to be at peace, to have peace. That's internal, relational, external. Right? So, peace. Kung natahon ka taga-adlaw, nakakaana. You know?
Wala na.
What na peace?
Wala, yun na. So if God desires us to be living in peace, and if the unbelieving partner does things that would define separates, the believer is not supposed to be enslaved. So the question now is, kanang consent and kanang separate. What defines consent? Or how will you use the word consent, and how do you define separate?
Kuan tingaling consent, bro. Two agreeing parties. So dapat ang usa kanang pareha silang duha ba ni agree, dili ingon usa lang.
Yeah.
Agreement na siya, contract.
I like what Sol said na kanang silang duha because it kind of seems like dapat ang unbeliever lang ang mo-consent bitaw, no? And then our conversation has made me think na, oh, the believer has to consent too.
Yeah, of course.
If consent man gyud gani, like ang duha gina ka party or everyone has to agree.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say like okay, I give you consent na let's say I give you consent to kana open up the fridge and get whatever you want. Pero nara po na niya kung mo get something siya sa fridge or not. Iyan na ba?
Ah.
So murag iyan na ako understanding when it comes to consent. So dapat ang two parties oyon sila.
Yeah. So if someone gets beat up, di gid siya ganahan ana.
Basing masokista siya, bro.
Nakuan
Di-
siya.
so, usually ang mahitabo ana, they're afraid to report because they're afraid to get beat even more.
Yeah,
So-
also they're thinking of the kids. If
Yeah.
may kids.
Anak ang
Stay for the
makulatahan.
kids kanang iyan na ba?
Ah. The other question also is this. When you read verse 8, to the unmarried and the widows I say, kaning to the unmarried ba? Does this mean never ever married? Or can this include those who were married but not anymore? Ang widows namatyan.
Yeah.
Okay? And presumably, ani, widows are kana bitawng gialagaan na sa mga anak nila during their day.
Older people.
Older, yeah. The unmarried here, is this kanang single ever since?
Divorce in our time.
And
Yeah.
ano ha, guys, today man good and before it's different when you say divorced. Today when you say divorced, it just means someone who was married and then the marriage ended. Before, when someone was divorced, ikaw ang gi-divorce. So you're the guilty party.
Ooh.
Okay, so when someone says in their day, nga that guy is divorced, meaning he's the one who did something wrong. That's why the wife divorced him.
What
Okay, so
do you
lahi
call the
na,
wife then?
ha?
What do you
Same.
call the wife?
If
If
the
he's
husband divorces the wife, it means the wife did something wrong.
yeah, I understand, but like, so you call the person who is guilty divorced. What do you call the wife?
There wasn't a word for them before.
Not unmarried.
That's
Divorcee.
Complainant.
That's why we're asking this question.
Divorcee.
Does it mean the unmarried is just those who never ever got married, or those who had to divorce their partner because their partner did something wrong? So they are now unmarried.
Here's a very stupid analogy. Open and then unopened. like you don't say like if it was opened and it for some reason got closed, you call it closed. You don't call it unopened. But an
No,
unopened thing,
unopened means never opened, man.
gani, so like that kind of
Yeah.
is that how unmarried is? Question mark.
Unmarried here is more like closed. It's
Closed.
not. It doesn't mean it's unopened. Like never ever
It,
married.
it's a difference, language difference. Maguna, there's what we call as contrary and contradictory. Now, when you say nga closed, ang contrary sa closed is open. Ang contradictory sa closed is unclosed. So, more or less the same siya, but it actually has a kinang distinction siya eh.
Mhm.
So, contrary and contradictory is a form of kinang trying to distinguish one aspect from the other. So,
Yeah.
when you say nga married, yes, ang contrary sa married is single. Contradictory sa married is unmarried.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
the
so
question Yes.
So
Are these
I
people?
don't know if you get it, no?
So
Kaya,
we still use
ang ano
that
mga,
today, Aya. The Unmarried. There's a movie recently, not so recent, mga couple of years ago. Si Angelica, they call it The Unmarried Wife. So yeah, gamit gyapon siya recently.
I saw
Yeah.
that name on Netflix.
Yes, there is.
I guess another way to ask this question ba is instead of saying to the single, to the unmarried and the widows, imagine asking manggod ka ng to those who have not eaten versus to those who are not currently eating. Lahi man na may it's possible nga nakakaon na siya, nya wala siya mukaon ron. Versus wa pag yun siya mukaon ever.
Right. Mm.
So with this, does the unmarried word here refer to never ever been married in the past or who are currently unmarried now, but they may have been married in the past, but had to divorce their partners because their partners did something wrong?
I don't have the My Sword app.
But it won't be in the My Sword, it won't be in the Greek.
It won't?
Nope.
It's not? Okay.
Because that's etymology, not usage.
Never mind then.
So, if you survey lang ha, suggestion lang, survey 1 Corinthians 7 and we know how marriage is supposed to work. Conjugal rights, okay? Living in peace. So, if the unbeliever consents to live with the believer and there's peace for them both, don't leave. There's peace. The guy might get saved because there's peace. But if the unbeliever consents to live and yet one of them has no peace, obviously I keep punching you, I don't have peace. If you keep getting punched, you don't have peace. What kind of consent are we talking about there? So there are certain words there. Consent, keywords, peace, unmarried, okay, and separates. Is separation only abandonment? What? Okay, question. If a guy never beats up the girl, never committed sex with another person, and never abandoned, but every day flirts with all the other girls in his life.
Adultery in the heart.
Hey, that
Like-
goes back to your original question, doesn't it? Like, he does all those great things, but he watches porn. That was the
Adultery
original
of the
question.
heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But don't forget, there's a huge difference sa online manggod. The big difference is this. He's not going out and acting on these temptations.
Oh, I'm pretty sure he's acting on
Yes,
it.
yes. So, yeah, but what I'm saying is he's not looking for a third party versus the guy who's actually looking for a third party and flirting. So you know where that's headed na. But he hasn't done it yet. So mo lagi na ang question, where do you draw the line? It's so convenient to just say no divorce forever. There's no line. Basta lang no. That's convenient, but real world, dude, seriously, for example, Vodi Bokam, if he had a daughter who got married to a guy who beats him up, it's hard for me to believe he's not going to use his MMA skills. You know, manggawas gid na tanan. Like,
What?
I'll take a widow. So, okay, so that's the question again. Where do you draw the line?
Right. And
When do you say separate is actual functional separation?
Kuan, separation of the heart.
Okay.
One I love.
Oh. What about there's peace, but there's just no consummation of the marriage? But there's so much peace. Provider, faithful, doesn't go out, doesn't go with anyone else, does not flirt.
if both
that
of
would be
them
very impossible, good bro.
Okay, kuan
That would
ba?
be
The
very
wife is not
impossible,
the
there will be peace.
Owner,
May peace nga kuan, wala consummation sa marriage. That's very impossible, good.
But if they both consent to it,
mora na siya, murag best friends ra silang duha. Mora.
Yeah. So why get married kung inana man di ay ba?
Minyo.
May pa.
here's an
Hey, kuan
idea.
ba ya?
The partner has cancer. It hurts.
Alahin ang istorya.
That's
Ade, na
different.
may disease.
Siya, pero di
If
lang
let's
niya
say normal,
Mo ganin na. So like, you know, there's peace.
Oh, but both of them desire one another. It's just, you know, this situation came upon them. Lahi mang good ning versus I don't want to. I just want to beat you up. Like, there's a huge difference there, huh?
Yeah.
And this is where keep this in your head, the phrase one flesh. If my hand is a rotting corpse, do I amputate the hand
Yes.
to save the rest of the body?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
now think about one flesh, and my hand is so rotten, it keeps punching me.
Yes.
Surgery.
Yeah, you have to remove
Amputate.
cancer.
So that's
Amputee.
that's one way of thinking of it. When you talk about one flesh,
Wait, Aya, here's an idea also. So when you say one flesh, it's not like, oh, the left side is the husband, the right side is the woman. It's more like cut off the thing that's making the marriage bad. So in that case, in that analogy, cut off your beating me. Like, you know, cut that off so that the rest will survive.
unless per mo lagi na until when? If you're beaten to the point of almost dying, well then.
Like, that's
The
why
marriage.
on the one side, no, may separation. And then, you know, like, the girl was like very scared nga mo mutugan sa ilahang pastor. Nga na, marbitag, like, so divorce. Ano, bitaw, like, wala pa gani, you know.
Yeah. No. Okay, counseling aside, because daghan mag-ways ana, you can do legal separation muna. We're not talking about like what should she do nga, sige, legal separation for a time, and then let's see if okay siya counseling, and then a report sa police nga wala na sila nagpuyo. There's all of that. But ang ending ana is di gyud ganahan ang guy is divorce allowed.
Wait, di ganahan ang guy nga?
Mo change. Like, I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna.
I would say allowed. Like, it definitely is permissible. Even in the Old Testament, like, it's already permissible. Just, like, you know, it should be the last thing, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's the last thing. But the question is it allowed? Because
Wow.
someone would say never allowed.
I would say yes.
Okay, look at the other texts also. You'll see it, man. The Bible will never contradict itself.
Which one are we going on?
Try Matthew 5.
Okay, Matthew 5. All right.
Yeah, what if the wife like nags the husband to death and he's like, I want to divorce her because she nags me all the time. Is that valid?
The Bible says to stay on the roof.
To go camping.
Yeah, that's Proverbs.
Dapat nindot kayo yung
1-30.
atop.
Oh,
Yeah.
The roof should be your man cave. It's my man roof.
the reason ko nga Proverbs 31 is at the end of the book of Proverbs. It's because when you cannot find Proverbs 31, you should go between Proverbs 1 to 30, which is go to the roof kung na yun naging wife. Diba?
But that is a very common excuse for most divorces, or some divorces actually. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to know if kanang valid ba na biblically.
Yeah. There is no peace.
There's no peace lagi. So that's why that's a good question, Beha. And look at Matthew 5. It says we're in the Beatitudes and we are in 27.
Mm-hmm.
You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you, everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So does that mean we stone them both to death? Like, if a Jew looked at a girl and the Jew said, wow, she's hot, and committed adultery in his mind, do we
No.
stone him to death? Do we stone the other girl to death?
No.
No. So Jesus is not talking about literal adultery here. He's talking about the heart.
Yeah.
So we're not supposed to interpret that as literal. Agree?
Mm.
Okay. If we agree that that's not supposed to be interpreted literally,
Mm-hmm.
go to the porn. Is the pornography issue now a literal thing?
Here's an idea. Like, it kind of affects their conjugal rights if he abuses himself watching those things. Like, you know.
Yes, but again, during their day there wasn't online, but there were prostitutes in the streets. And so if a man walks to the market and before before you have to imagine what it was like before. There was no red light district. They were just in the marketplace. Like, I'm gonna buy chicken, I'm gonna buy groceries. Oh, and she's offering her services too. It's like potatoes and prostitute. It's like that. Okay. It's not like you have to go to some dark alley. Okay. So that's why
You
when
have to
Jesus talks about,
sanitize the food.
oh, it's not just saying now go into this alley, and it's not like that. It was so normal. That's why Jesus talks about this. If you have that in your heart, so you're buying potatoes and you look and you're fantasizing, you're guilty.
Yeah.
But does that now mean, okay, divorce na?
No, but what I'm trying to say is, like, yes, we don't divorce based on that, but that
Okay.
one also has katay-katay nga
Yes.
problems.
Yes. But until the katay does not get to a certain point, it's all here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so would you say there is a line? The word separate, the word consent, is there a line that you can draw?
Yeah, I think if you like have sexual relations with another woman or another guy, like basically committing adultery, the act of adultery.
Okay, so there is a line. When thoughts turn to action, that's when you can say, there we go. Would you agree with that? Okay, lisod man if you just say, well, nagnagra man siya. Well, he just said some really, really mean things. Like every day he calls me fat, or every day he says, like, is that, wala na, I'm so emotionally abused? Or is there a line yun nga, okay, it got physical? It got, like, when do you say it's affecting the one flesh?
This is so hard.
Yeah, there's alignment. Yun. Yeah, also kanang separation. What is what ba? May kuan gani question. I mean, yeah, given again nga like if when it comes to kuan adultery, mo na gid na siya gyud. But then we still napapuy consent. So I don't know. Really.
I feel you, son.
I'll give you another example. Jesus said abandonment, diba?
Mm-hmm.
How do you define abandonment? 1 year, 5 months?
I think when you give yourself to
I
someone,
think
not your spouse. That's what I think. Because of many passages in Matthew 19, Mark, like Jesus says that if you commit adultery or sexual immorality, then that's already not valid to divorce. And I
Yeah.
think
Kaya
that's
one flesh naman siya
also,
sa lain.
yeah, and I think that's also what he means by separation.
But what if the guy doesn't do the adultery? He just isn't there. For how long
Um,
before?
Then that's his fault.
I,
You know,
I, I
he has
think
to repent.
Yeah,
I think if niingon na siya nga, I will abandon you now. Muna na siyang abandonment.
But a lot dili na ha.
Yeah.
Rare kayo na mo admit. So,
So, official, I have
Hi,
formally
I
abandoned.
would like to abandon you now. Rare na
wow.
kayo.
Honest non-believer. Unsa ba?
Honest non-believer.
Just they just up and go. So when can you say na, like for example in the real world, okay, Christian couple kuno onya gets pregnant, it gets a little difficult, husband disappears, leaves the wife for let's say 2.5 years wala ang guy, okay, so the girl keeps attending church, there's another guy in church who loves her, wants to marry her, be a father to the child, legit Christian dude. Now the girl is saying, Pastor, the biological dad who I married to legally hasn't been around for about 4 years already. There's this guy who
Turned
loves me.
incognito.
I have feelings for him. Can I now divorce?
Wow.
There's a way for lawyers to track him down and then ma-divorce man sa US. Can I now divorce?
I guess if they do it legally, then it's okay.
Okay, but now, unsa man, but is it 2 years, 4 years? Biblically, how do you define abandonment?
How?
I'm asking you guys.
Um,
Wa nagpadag kwarta, nagpada pero 50% lang sa giingon sa court of law, nagpada full pero wa nagpakita for 7 years. Like, when do you define that? How do you define that?
I think ipangutana sa nato, hi, are you abandoning me now? Yes or no?
or go back to the consent. Hey, I found this great guy. Is it okay?
Oh,
no, I
what
think she should, settle first before, entertaining the
Yeah,
thought
right.
of
Yes.
that Christian guy.
Like,
no, he
hey,
never think
would you
about
like
it.
to abandon me?
It doesn't happen man good that way nga kanang you know what, I okay ra ko kay wata ka ba mo, most Christian women think this way. We don't know man good if God will turn his heart, change his heart, and he will come back. So I'll hold
Yeah.
on to that hope. And then suddenly here comes Mr. Right. I'm like, uy, I don't want to hope for that guy anymore. There's this guy right now. And
When oh sorry,
yeah,
I'm
so
reading First Corinthians 7:10, verse 10, 11, and then 12. To the married, I give this charge, not I, but the Lord. The wife should not separate from her husband, but if she does, she should remain unmarried, or else be reconciled to her husband. And the husband should not divorce his wife. And then sa 12, it says, to the rest I say, if any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, then she should not divorce him. So, but in this case, the guy is not present anymore. So, and then technically the guy left her.
yeah.
So she should stay unmarried. She cannot marry that new guy, basically.
Okay.
They're still married.
Okay, so that's one. Okay, that's one option, huh? To the man I give this charge, not I, but the Lord. The wife should not separate from her husband, but if she does, she should remain unmarried or else be reconciled. Now, what does this mean? Should not separate? Does it mean for any reason whatsoever, or unsa man ni?
Hello.
Hello? What?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, nikalit. Okay, so what does this mean? The wife should not separate from her husband. Is it no matter what? Dili man, because obviously he says, but if she does. So is divorce allowed? Okay, Vodibokam says never, ever, ever allowed. But Paul says here that not I, but the Lord, the wife should not separate from her husband, but if she does. So pwede di ay.
Uh, separate. So
Ah.
but if she does, she should remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband.
Hmm.
And if the husband should not divorce his wife. So
Ah. So the first question is, allowed ba ang divorce?
Yes, it's allowed
So it's
according to
allowed.
yeah,
Paul.
yes.
So Jesus said it's allowed. Paul says it's allowed. But if she does, is proof that it's allowed.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you study step by step, number 1, it's allowed. Number 2, for what reason?
Uh
Is it only abandonment, only adultery? Does it include? So is it any or is there a line? That's actually the real question. Is there a line? Ay, hindi na ako naghinda ng kanila. Okay.
pretty much nandiyan siya kanang distinctives and then napudya murag yeah, there's a line.
Let's grab. Yeah, so there is a line. The question is, how do you draw the line?
That's the difficult part.
Yeah, which is my complicated like, hi, have you abandoned me already? But based on unsay gingon, dili man nga na ang case usually. So yeah,
There's
that's
also the
murag naka
common situation ba nga kanang like professing Christians sila or kanang they're still together but they don't, they don't talk much, but the husband still provides, and then like do the thing as husband, but not really, like they don't talk as much. Basically, physically present but mentally or emotionally absent na. So
So check out na di ay.
check out na.
Oh.
So
But
the wife doesn't have peace.
na-abandon na sa heart. Heart
Well,
abandonment.
peaceful like physically, pero
Yeah.
inside they are, they're at war.
So without going into the whole counseling issue, can we all agree? And speak up po mo ha, but do you guys agree that number 1, divorce is allowed. Number 2, there is a line to draw. It's not for any reason lang. But there are like specific reasons nga too heavy. We won't discuss what that line is yet, but do you agree that there is a line?
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
I agree nga it is allowed and there is a line. It's allowed sa kanang katong sa verses naman siya ikuan katong on the grounds of adultery or kanang ning separate ba ang kuan. So nagi it's allowed. It's just that kuan and then napoy line. But I don't know unsa ang line gyud. Like kano sa ang abandonment considered abandonment? Kano sa ni siya considered this or ingana ba?
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Not related to marriage, but everything. When do you really draw lines?
And the teacher asks you to. Charot.
Like,
The
okay,
point.
the Bible doesn't tell us certain. There are certain things the Bible tells us. Do not kill.
Mm.
Okay. Honor your parents.
Mm.
Until when? If your parent says, I want you to read the Bible less. You read the Bible every day. Can you just read it like 3 times a week na lang? Where's the line? lahi man if your parents says you have to pray to my gods na lahi. Okay, kana obvious na. But in many areas of our Christian walk, a lot of times the Bible doesn't give you a line. The Bible gives you principles, diba?
Yeah.
Di man ta Old Testament nga, here's how you do not break the
Yeah.
Sabbath day.
True.
Ganang, yeah.
Okay.
Tangent, or maybe not even a tangent, separate note, siguro, I don't know. You know, the idea of marriage being instituted for the purpose of reflecting the relationship of God and Jesus Christ, like Jesus submitting to the Father, and then at the same time, us as the church submitting to Jesus Christ. So then,
Uh-huh.
when we start thinking about lines, for me, medyo maglisod ko, because then that also makes me face the fact nga, does Christ have a line with me? Like, if I sin this much in my life, would he divorce me? You know?
If a
I
person
think
in heaven siya hell,
Huh?
unrepentant. If I
Unrepentant?
refuse to repent,
How again?
heaven or hell. So I was never married to Christ.
Right. But then, like, this is in the context of, butang naman na to nga, marriage, right? Married naman siya. It's not like we're still speculating, are they married or not? It's that they are married. And so, like, you know,
But don't forget, with Christ and man, Christ is perfect man good. So
yeah.
because he's perfect, he knows kinsa ang tinuod og dili. But
right.
with two people man good, we're flawed human beings. So two people who decide to get married, they're not divine, they're not gods. So
Yeah.
they don't know if they truly are the perfect representation of Jesus and the church and etc. That's why as much as God says he hates divorce, he allows it. To also
Yeah.
prove that there are those who claim to be Christians but are not.
Also, I think different man sila nga covenant ang marriage ug sa
Yeah.
atong kuan relationship with Christ. Dili siya the same kind of covenant. Good. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So mo na siya.
Like, okay, yes, I get man ha. Like, I'm not saying that they are equal and
Yeah.
all that, but like, it's the whole concept of commitment, you know? You have committed, or no, rather, like, the whole reason of the gospel is because God has committed to love us and then act upon that commitment, right? So when normally, if you get married, you do have these vows that say, you know, till death do us part, except in cases of abuse, non-conjugatal rights, and abandonment.
Abandonment.
And you know, like, I'm just asking. I'm not being nitpicky. I'm just asking.
Well, this is where mo lagi na, that's why it's very very ano. Ang kaning kang Esther ba, we'll get to that in a bit ha, because that's the remarriage naman good nga issue. But okay, when it comes to lines, it's hard. We agree it's hard to draw. We also agree that marriage is supposed to reflect Christ and the church, although it's not gonna be done perfectly in this world because of sin. We also know that if lines cannot be drawn, a lot of it is subject to case-to-case consciences.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Now, if we agree with all of that, then I guess semi-conclusion would be divorce is allowed. The reason is not yet sure, but there is a line. We have not agreed yet on what that line is,
Yeah.
but it might be possible. It might be possible that it's a case-to-case issue.
Oh, it likely is.
Yeah.
Huh?
I would like to add katong that's why I was inclined to body Bokam before because he said nga, yes, the person committed adultery or the husband committed or the wife, but you have to forgive that person because it says there nga, love your spouse, right? And then if you can't love them as a spouse, love them as your neighbor. And then if you can't love them as your neighbor, you have to love him or her as an enemy. So in short, you really have to forgive either sooner or later, but you really have to forgive that
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
So until when man ako siya in love as an enemy?
Yeah.
Guys, we all know man nga that's ACGCs is to support a position.
Oh no.
If you think about it, come on, like don't love the person as a spouse, love the person as a friend. Well, what if I go out there and
Well,
love someone as a
if
spouse?
if you can love the person as a friend, then why marry them or can remain in marriage ba? Kung pwede naman dahil to love as a friend.
Oh, love as a friend na lang ta. Now, also, what's stopping me from now going out there and loving someone else as a wife? If pwede naman din nato ni i-twist.
Oh, wait, there. Unsa man ni kanang Christians? In which case, I can answer like obeying Christ.
Di ba? Like, I'm married, but I will also love some other girl as a wife.
No.
No. Di ba? So, Bodhi, as much as we love the guy, there are some things that he says, no one's perfect, man. But if you have to forgive gihapon, love as a friend, then why are you married? Then love as an enemy, why are you married? You're still disobeying the Bible because the Bible says husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church. The Bible doesn't
Yeah.
say if hindi mo kaya, then love
Love as enemy.
The Bible never teaches that. So don't get one and insert it there para to keep your view nga dapat marriage is,
Permanent.
don't, di ba?
It's so difficult. Bible says many things like let your yes be yes. Let your marriage vows be your marriage vows. But then things happen.
Sa ano naman sa ako lang ba personally ba, I can understand the view of Bokam. It's because the divorce rate manggod between unbelievers spouses ug sa kanang professing Christians are not kanang the same or kanang are not different, meaning there's no difference between Christian marriage and Christian marriage in terms of divorce. So I guess he's just trying to emphasize the value of marriage as a kinang fundamental bitaw in your kinang Christian walk.
Yeah.
So makasabot jud ko sa iyang point ba, which is gina siya, admirable gina siya ba. The only thing lang pod nga kuan, it's because we live in a fallen world and there are some things na you have to do practically. Practically ba, you have to do things nga malaga na ingon si David nga there has to be a line to be drawn. It's admirable character nga like women or kanang spouses would be kanang martyr type bitaw nga to thick and thin mo gyud sa kuan mo stick gyud sa marriage. There are people who would do that. There are people who would do that. But if the Bible allows na certain areas or certain divorce is kanang permissible. Sa ako ba, it's difficult to bind the conscience of Christians to things nga if the biblical principle is there to allow such act nga i-bind man nimo ang conscience of Christians not to do it. Murag lisod kay ba? Lisod po kay siya.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why it's very difficult to just say dapat inani.
Blanket statement.
Lisod.
It's very difficult because number one, the Bible makes concessions for us because the Bible knows we're flawed, fallen, sin gyapon rules this world, no? If you look at Romans 7. Okay? Ingon siya, You do not know, brothers, for I'm speaking to those of you who know the law. The law is binding on a person as long as he lives. A married woman is bound by law to her husband while he lives, but if her husband dies, she's released from the law of marriage. Okay, look at the word, released. Okay, released. Accordingly, she'll be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive, but if her husband dies, she's free from that law. If she marries another man, she's not an adulteress. Okay, likewise, my brothers, you also have died to the law through the body of Christ. So, there's a way that someone can be released from the law, from a specific law. How? If you die to that law, or that law has died to you, or is rendered obsolete to you. Okay? Is that clear? Verse 6, now we are released from the law, having died to that which held us captive or enslaved. Remember the word enslaved kanina?
Yes.
Okay. So, it's possible to be released from a law if we have died to that law which has kept us enslaved. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, back to 1 Corinthians 7.
Yes.
Okay, look at 1 Corinthians 7. To the unmarried, verse 8. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 8. To the unmarried and the widows, the first question is, ang kaning unmarried, is this never been married, or those who used to be married and then now are currently not married to anyone?
Used to be
Used to
married.
be married.
Is it possible? So you see it na?
Yes.
Why it's like that? So
Yeah.
it's possible for someone to have been married, but then she decides to let go. So now she is unmarried. She's
Yeah.
no longer slave to the marriage, the law of marriage to that person. So question, ingon man si Paul dere, to the married I give this charge, not I but the Lord, the wife should not separate from her husband. Should not separate, ha? Look at that, should not. But if she does, she should remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband, and the husband should not divorce his wife. Okay? Kaning she should remain unmarried. I thought if you are unmarried and you cannot exercise self-control, get married. Diba? It says right there, verse 8, to the unmarried and widows, I say it's good for them to remain single as I am, but if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion.
Isn't it in the context of whether your spouse is alive or your ex is alive or dead?
But remember, we are given by Paul says, pwede ba ang divorce? It's not just dead or alive.
Yeah, but
Is
in
it
terms of
talking-
marriage naman eh.
You're not supposed to it's like saying he beat you up so you can divorce him, but if you can't control your burning fire, go back to the guy who beats you up just so you can quench that fire.
Yeah. This is what they say.
That's are we saying go back and get beat up just so you can not
The very thought of your ex should quench that fire.
No, but
I
that's
see
not
it as okay, go. Sorry.
Sorry, yes.
I see it as like no, it's okay. I'm naguhat ko ninyo. I see it as like kanang okay, verse 10 or verse 11 it says like or verse 10 it says kanang if the wife should not separate from her husband. So it's talking about the wife. And then verse 11 it says, but if she does, she should remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband. So then in verse number 8, is this talking about kanang unmarried woman when the husband separated from her and not her separating from him?
Okay. Back to context. Before manggod.
I'm just asking if that's what I'm.
It's a very
I'm also just asking.
context. The context before manggod is a husband can divorce his wife if he's not pleased with her, and they had no line. If the wife burned his food, his breakfast, if the eggs were not scrambled well enough, he could have divorced her. Okay? There's actually a whole book on this. The 5 Views on Marriage and Remarriage and Divorce. It's a really good book. But anyway, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Essenes, they had different views. And I forgot which group held what. But one of the groups said, basta lang gani mapayag ang egg sa pagluto sa breakfast, pwede i-divorce. Okay? It was that bad. So when Jesus says, you're not allowed to divorce unless, was Jesus, the first question is this, was Jesus saying, mao ni ang duha nga litmus test, if not this, bawal ang divorce? Or was Jesus trying to make a point nga, guys, napaig lang imong itlog, og imong hotdog, og imong bacon, or no, they don't eat pork. But you know what I mean? Like, nasayop lang ang pagluto sa imong dinner, makig-divorce na ka? No. It has to be something very grievous. So was Jesus trying to point out the gravity of sin for divorce to be valid, or was Jesus giving them a list? Now we know Jesus, he doesn't give lists. It's love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind.
No, just kidding.
No, but even the Beatitudes, it's not like, you know, blessed are the poor in spirit. How poor? Like, super poor in spirit? Like, wala man. You know, like, bankrupt poor? Or like, you know, I need to call my mortgage bank for spirituality. It's not like that. So we know Jesus doesn't give lists. So when he says abandonment, adultery, etc., he's not saying these are the 2 qualifications. He's saying, don't just divorce kay napaig imong dinner. You know, like, have a kind of love na goes beyond that, ba? Not that shallow. Because they came from cultures where, diba, they just got their wives, like the Benjamites, diba? I don't have a spouse. Oh, nag-party sila mga girls dito, just kidnap them and that's your wife.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
So Jesus is saying, don't treat them that way. They're not objects. Okay, so they're your flesh. They're one flesh with you. So he's talking about the gravity. So when it got here, when he says to those who, okay, verse 8, to the unmarried and the widows. Okay? Ingon siya, you can marry if if you know you're burning like, whew, it's really hard. Okay? So get married. The question is he saying it is better to marry than to burn? Or is he saying it is better to marry / remarry than to burn?
Unmarried man. So apil na tanan nga dili married ang status. Whether na marry sa una o wa. Diba?
And by the way, FYI, Old Testament, you cannot divorce a person and then remarry that same person, FYI. Leviticus. If you divorce a girl and then remarry the same girl, you're unclean.
Wait. Oh, I'm not chirping. Wasn't that nga, if you divorce that girl and she marries someone else and then you want to marry her, that's the time it's not.
Kanapod.
Before.
Those 2 are bawal. Bawal man sad ang you divorce and then you marry her again.
Natigil lagi bawal ng cool off. Charat ay.
You cannot swallow the food that you spit out already.
Wow!
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Whew.
Pastors, are you okay?
But the one big issue magud there is what you call the defrauding the family of the dowry. Kay imong giminyuan nya imong gibalik nya humana na imong minyuon balik, murag imong gibinuangan ang dowry nila ba? Gigamit imong negosyo. Okay, but of course that was a big deal with the dowry before, but in the New Testament it's still, the principle is there. Imong gipakaslan nya imong gibiyaan nya imong pakaslan balik. Murag usa ni joke time?
Binuang.
So it's kind of like that also. So here the question is, to the married I give discharge. To the unmarried, better to marry than to burn, or better to marry / remarry someone else than to burn?
Why then mention reconcile with your husband? Like, it's not to say nga, hey, go back to your flesh-beating husband, but like, reconcile.
Yeah, because remember, this is the whole consent issue.
Yeah.
So in other words, the gravity isn't there. The gravity isn't there. It's a consent problem. I really don't want to be a Christian. Hay, samukan jud ko anang pastor ninyo eh, sabaan kina siya. Every time maminaw ko sa sermon mo, mga to akong dunggan, I just can't. Okay, like
Yeah, also Aya, because si Paul was saying this because like katong sa Roman nga time, no, like the husbands just divorced their wife without any valid reason, just like katong kanang burned egg. So that's why Paul is stating this para to give emphasis or to avoid that kind of situation. It's not an easy way out. Or if you really have a valid reason for you to even consider divorce or separation.
Yes, precisely. So this is not a kanagong, for example, irreconcilable differences. Ana lang good nya, sige lang sila glalis. If you wanna get remarried, you marry the same person. If you leave, you reconcile with your spouse. Okay. Sara man ka na. Kanang it's not, the gravity isn't there ba? But if kulatahay na ni, if serial adultery na ni, if it's a threat na to your life or the life of your children, kaya lahi naman gud na siya nga level. It violates the one flesh issue.
So there you go, the line.
So that's why I brought up the one flesh. And that's something you have to consent, peace, and the one flesh, the purpose of consummating marriage, okay, of pointing to Christ and the church, to all of that. I'm going to open a different text. Asa na to?
Aya.
Yeah.
It's allowed nga, yung mo nang gi-divorce, makibalik ka.
That's where it gets tricky. Because legally pwede baya siya, pero it can be a sign by of kanang imong gibinuangan, imong gikon. There's a lot of con artists who do that.
Just asking because of the whole, you're already unmarried. So it means you've already done your divorce thing. And the suggestion to reconcile.
Okay. Look at Luke 16 verse 18.
Verse 18. Everyone who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, and he who marries a woman divorced from her husband commits adultery.
Okay. So it sounds pretty simple from looking at that text alone.
Yep.
If you bring in the whole issue of kinapaig ang dinner, I'll marry this girl, paig akong breakfast, divorce. Marry girl B, paig akong lunch, divorce. Marry girl C, raw ako ang dinner, divorce.
I think he's upset because he's hungry.
No, but
food.
Okay, so he's a foodie, fine.
He needs a happy meal.
Go drive through.
Yes. Fast food saves lives.
So, muna siya. That's why this is a tricky text, a tricky subject, because some people say it's allowable for divorce for grievous circumstances, but no remarriage na forever. And they take this text. But if you get the context, and remember this is Jesus talking, ha? If you get the context, okay, the context of the time na divorce was so easy, it's left and right, it's like magpanotarize lang ka, divorce na ka. What if Jesus was speaking about marriage and divorce from that perspective? Okay? And the interesting thing about this is that it comes right before asa na to? Luke 16:14. The Pharisees who were lovers of money heard all these things. They ridiculed him, and he said, "You are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. For what is exalted among men is an abomination in the sight of God." And what was a way to exalt yourself before men? It was by using the technicalities of the law, but not, your heart's really not there. We're legal man, according to the law of Moses, to divorce my wife. I just have to say I divorce her, and I divorce her. So it's Mosaic law legal, technical. Okay? And so when verse 16 says, the law and the prophets were until John, since then the good news of the kingdom of God is preached and everyone forces his way into it, but it's easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one dot of the law to become void. Remember, he's now talking about the law of Moses and now him being the new lawgiver. So he's looking at the heart and the spirit of the law. He's not saying that the law of Moses will always apply the technicalities. He's talking about the heart of the law of Moses. That's why he goes to all these other things. The divorce issue, and then the rich man and Lazarus. There was nothing wrong with the rich man not giving food. Technically, he owns the rights to that food. It's his food. He had no legal obligation to give Lazarus any food. Right? So why is this rich man suddenly the evil guy in the story? He was technically obedient to the law.
Hold on, I got distracted. Ano sa tayo? Si Rich Man and Lazarus.
The rich man and Lazarus, you have to ask this question. Why is the rich man the bad guy? He never hurt Lazarus. He never attacked. He never beat the guy up. He was just a rich guy who ate his stuff, who ate his food. Why is he the bad guy?
What makes him the bad guy is that because he did not give compassion, did not have compassion to Lazarus. So that's what was Jesus is trying to, emphasize or imply.
Yes.
You can follow all these rules if you don't have a heart or if you're not doing it heartily. Still, you're still committing a sin or something.
Yeah. So you're right. Absolutely right. And so it's the heart.
So heart issues,
Heart issues, yeah. Under the Mosaic law, the rich man did not go against the Mosaic law. He just gave his tithes, the Levitical tithe, the temple tithe, the feast tithe, and the Levites used it to distribute to the poor. He was actually, quote unquote, giving to the poor already through the Levites.
Kaya mo rin siya whitewash tomb na clean on the outside, but wicked, corrupt in the inside.
Yeah. So think about it this way, Look at verse 18 about divorce. It is sandwiched between the Pharisees and the heart issue. Rich man, heart issue. Can you imagine? Heart issue, letter of the law, heart issue. You really think that's what Jesus was trying to teach? Heart, letter. Heart again. No, Jesus has always been heart issue all the way. So if you take this as is, everyone who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, and you don't look at the heart issue behind it, the context behind it, you're going to take that legally or legalistically. So mao na siya ang danger. Now imagine for a moment, now make it more realistic. Make it today's situation. Kato. Woman is left or abandoned 4 years by her husband, did not return. She's born again, goes to church, meets this wonderful dude who loves her genuinely, wants to marry her, be the father for her children. And legit Christian silang duha. Like, as far as you can tell, fruits of the Spirit, all there. Growing in sanctification, the works. Would you say, sorry girl, you're married once, you just gotta burn forever. There's no solution to you. That's it. You just have to kill your feelings for him. He has to kill his feelings for you. And I don't know, digit madal, go look for another church. Now, isn't it possible she will meet someone else later on in a different church? So where is the living in peace? Where is the purpose of marriage that it is better to marry than to burn? Where will we put all those? Naminyo man siya once. If we follow that, think of a 16-year-old Muslim girl who was forced to marry a 54-year-old man. Okay, and then we would think it's child abuse. She escapes. Okay? No, wait. A 16-year-old girl and a 30-year-old man. Muslim silang duha. They got married because she was forced into child marriage. She escapes Islam, becomes born again, becomes a Christian, and the other guy doesn't really care because he's got 4 other girl wives, young girls nga wives. He doesn't care. So she begs him, could you please divorce me? The Muslim guy says, yes, I divorce you. Divorce is final, done, it's legal. 16-year-old girl is now 27, already divorced, falls in love with a Christian guy. She's also a Christian now. No more na? Because she was married once when she was 16 years old, underage, but valid under Sharia law. I have no volume. Oh no, you guys are mute.
I think pwede tayo na siya maka-remarry under kuan. Yeah, I think pwede siya maka-remarry. If we put it in that line or perspective na kuan na katong unmarried na term ba.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think she could. Plus kuan ba di niuna ang husband niya, I abandoned you.
Yeah, abandoned you.
So,
I have 4 other wives or 3 other wives. Bahala ka diha. And you're Christian. I don't.
Sorry. Ang katong example ba, I get confused because this Muslim 16-year-old girl, and then when she turned 22 or 27, like the Muslim husband divorced her. But katong Christian woman married, her husband just went MIA, missing in action. So wala gyud legal separation. So
yeah, but legally, pwede ba yan ha? You can make an appeal sa court of law. I don't know wait. No. Philippine law, you have to get an annulment. But in the US, you can make an appeal in the court of law to actually to divorce the person. I-track down na nila, and the government will be the one to help you find that person, etc., etc. But let's say nakapaanal jud ka din sa Pilipinas. Let's just say lang. Then, mo lagi na ang question. Can you tell the person yun nga, dig yun, naminyo man ka once in your life. So, sorry, naka forever. So that's where this question comes in. Do you guys have other thoughts?
For me, what's making it really, really hard to have an answer is that regardless of the situation, how each party feels, and then what I want more than anything is a clear answer from the Bible, whether or not I can say yes or no. Like, because I kind of, like, I know it's hard. I know you're burning, girl. You know, like, I know, like, but like if the Lord calls you na not to do a certain thing or to do a certain thing, like I don't know. I don't want it to be like, oh, because it's a loophole or an excuse, but I want it to be like, glorify the Lord with your life, like a living sacrifice. Good, nga ba to? It sounds so legalistic. That's my struggle.
The thing is, Magod, you don't have to struggle with it because if the Bible allows it, why? Then that will glorify God. If, as long as you obey Scripture, it
Remarriage now.
huh?
We're talking about the remarriage now.
Yeah, the remarriage gani. So, mo lagi na, like, depends on how you interpret those texts. Ako, Magod, I'll just be straight, ha. My very first view ever was never like permanence view good, like no divorce whatsoever. And then it moved to no divorce except adultery and abandonment. And then it became as long as it violates the one flesh and the purpose of marriage as God designed it to be, and the line has been drawn, the line has been crossed na ba? There's abuse, physical, gikulatahan, ana, then I'll be okay with divorce. Okay, that's already you're not reflecting the love of Christ towards the church. Jesus never beats us up. He loves us, comforts us, and redeems us. He protects us. You know, and the whole point of the one flesh is these hands are physical hands to watch over our physical flesh. I cannot imagine turning these into fists to hit Rainy like that. I would want another dude to step in and really, really, you know, do some stuff to me. Like, so inana siya. The one flesh thing is so different. Okay, so that's where it's drawn. That's why adultery in the heart is not the same as real actual adultery. Pornography and buying potatoes and seeing a prostitute, I mean, those are two different things. Now, if he goes to the prostitute, different story. But if it's just a potato and like, I'd better get the hot potato home, you know, like, so ana ba, lahi kay siya. And then you have to wonder what Jesus means when he teaches those things. Is it, is he making a list? Mao lang ni ang pwede, mao lang ni ang dili pwede. Or is he addressing a heart condition? And whenever I read Jesus, Manggod, whenever I read Jesus and Paul actually, I don't see lists. Paul makes lots of lists, but there's no line to the list. Think about it. Honor your parents.
For example lang ha sa atong current situation karon. Before walay kinang drug addiction. Bang ano ba? Or even kinang alcoholism to the point nga kuan ba kinang it has become a kinang murag a disease ba. Now let us say for example sa isa ka married couple. There was a for some point okay sila, and then later on the husband became so depressed na wala siyang work na baron na something happened sa iyang life, became addicted, tapos giadtog rehab, wala na ayo, after several months, several years balik-balik og kinang drugs. Can it be a ground for divorce or not? Up to what extent that drug addiction can be considered as ground for divorce? Okay, this is a very serious nga issue.
Yeah.
No? So something like that that is not really covered if you look at the New Testament nga settings ba. But this is a very real and very serious nga situation in our time. Not only kinang drug addiction. Serial drunkenness. What about kinang gambling debts nga it destroys the family and the future of the children because nangutang kay kuan para lang sa yung gambling habits. So are these kinang considered as part of drawing the line when man nato pwedeng when man nato pwedeng consider siya as part of the reasons or ground for divorce? That makes it very difficult again.
Yeah.
Di ba?
And it's very convenient to have a list. Nag-drugs,
Yeah.
di kulata na ka, nag-gambling pa yun siya, pero wa man siya nag-adultery.
Wa man sa sige, in a sense wala kay abandon kay naamra man sa balay permi. Manghugas pa
So,
man
guys,
kay plato, manglaba pa man gani. Pero pag wala di ang wife mo na na.
Physically present.
check out the eye. Pero mao lagi na, like, it's hard to just say, Jesus gave us these two qualifications, therefore. But mao lagi na, does Jesus deal with lists? Does the New Testament ever deal with lists? Well, man. You read like sexual immorality. How
I
do you
think
define?
legalistic.
So, bro,
Hello?
Putol-putol.
we can hear you.
So naputol, but yeah, I got the first word. It can be legalistic. It can be legalistic, and it can be ungracious and even unloving.
Now let's put another situation. Let's say for example ba, if let us say mo to say kuan, let's say we can agree nga there's a ground for divorce other than the two kanang explicit statements sa New Testament. If we can be very very legalistic, but just like we would want lists actually. If let's say for example a Christian couple, one partner actually committed adultery. If we are to be very legalistic, that's already a ground for divorce. So why do we kinang still strive to kinang pwede pa siya ma-patch up, ma-reconcile or maano. And there are cases nga the other party is nag-adultery, but still the marriage was kinang kept intact, remained.
Yep.
So it still boils down to what the foundations or the fundamental reasons, which is it is a heart issue that either could be kinang redeemed, or to a certain extent dili na gyud siya. That's why there's a provision for divorce. Because why is it nga na reconciliation even if there's a adultery? Nga if that's a ground for divorce, pwede na. Sige, wala na gini basta kay adultery diretso giday na siya. But it doesn't happen that way. There are many cases nga that the adultery was present, but because of some factors that come along with it, nga na restore ang marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the heart, but that's why this is just me akong position is very simple lang yun. Divorce is allowed depending on the gravity. Remarriage is allowed, and you don't have to stay unmarried. You can remarry, and you can marry someone else. But case to case lang in terms of counseling. Kay there are some good who are sila ang guilty party ba? Kana mas mamumblema ko. But if it's the innocent party who wants to remarry, go ahead. It's better to marry than to burn, and if it glorifies God, it shows nga God redeemed you from a very, very terrible person to now having a very, very good person in your life. That's a redemptive thing that God's doing. Why should I stop that? Diba? And I think that even glorifies God more.
Isura po let's say for example ba, to the unmarried ba, kanang either you marry or you burn. Pero kung divorce na siya,
You just burn.
You just burn. You cannot marry because it's not allowed. But you get burned because you're not married. So either of the two, you keep on sinning. So asa man siya mo kuan, no? Murag in a sense ba, there's no redemptive kinang value of why we kinang prohibit ani siya nga murag wala may wala magi say way out sa iyang situation. Could she become a martyr nga di lang gyud mo kon antuson hangtod mamatay siya? Possible. Possible, but is there a biblical reference that we can show nga sa kanang nga situation pwede gid siya. There's a situation nga pwede na siya, but it's persecution sa imong faith. Not about burning passion or kanang unmarried nga divorcee situation. So murag lisod pod ba, no?
Last thought po nako to add to that, no? I'm trailing on Freddie's thoughts na there's people will say among good, well, di man kailangan ng redemption this life, na may afterlife nga ma-redeem na tanan. Diba? We would say that. I know because I used to say this. Sorry ka, ana, that's the lot you have. That's a cross you bear.
Mm.
And then I look at so many verses in Scripture, New Testament actually, where God redeems our lives not just in the future but also now. There are certain things that God does not, like for example, if let's say lang ha, someone got AIDS. Then God decreed that this guy would have AIDS because of, let's say, he slept around so much on a cage. Like, that's God already closing the door. So, as long as it's God who closes the door, wala ko'y mabuhat. But if God does not close that door, let's say, okay, this is gonna be weird. Let's just be adults, huh? But let's say this guy, he's a Christian, he got persecuted, and one of the things that the persecutors did was to really circumcise him. You know what I mean? So he cannot consummate a marriage at all. Then that's okay. God ordained that would happen. Sige, so the redemption is in the afterlife now. But as long as God does not allow things to really close the door, why should we do it? Why should we take God's place and say this door is closed? Why? Because we say so. Because bawal lang yun. No, but what about all the texts that say kanisha? And now, if Jesus said clearly, the reason why remarriage is not allowed is because of like some divine, Adam was formed for Eve and Eve for Adam, and there's just one for one and not two for one, blah 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 blah. Awa na, then it's divine order. Then it's cut. Wala na gyud. Then I would say amen. But Jesus never gave us that. Paul never gave us that. And there is context for a possible interpretation where he was referring to the heart issue and not so much a list. Context itself, the pericope of the texts, the exegesis. So it's so hard to just say no. Na there's no divine, like when Paul said, ang men ang lead sa church because Adam was formed first before Eve. O ano ko'y mabuhat ana? They gave naman the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that specific kanang topic ba? Can you help me understand Matthew 19? Okay, that's actually what you mentioned na kanang it has to be like some sort of divine order. I also really do take that into consideration. And then one of the things na ginagamit sa mga permanent view, is this one. So I'm like, I need to understand this rightly in order for me to have, for my view to align with scripture, basically. So it was here na the Pharisees came up to Jesus and asked him, is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? And Jesus answered that, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother rather, and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. So what therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. So I'm asking, like, is this not equivalent to like the divine order na like this is before
not really
happened? Yan na ba ta?
Okay, exegeta ha.
Please.
Look, there's a trap here. The Pharisees, they like trapping Jesus.
Yeah.
Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? Remember I told you there was a Pharisee, the Sadducee, the Essenes, the Zealots. They all had different views on marriage. So this is a trap. Hey Jesus, are you siding with the other group nga kung napaig lang ang dinner, pwede mo divorce?
Yeah.
Which group are you siding with, Jesus?
Mm.
So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to trap Christ. And he answered, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? And he said, therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. The one flesh there is the principle.
Mm.
The basis of the marriage is the one flesh.
Mm.
But is the basis of the prohibition the same?
Prohibition.
Inani mo na, just because the something, if you say na ay law nga bawal ni, if they law nga mo ni ang basis, okay, mo ni basis ani nga law, it doesn't mean nga if there's a prohibition, it's also because of this same basis. Pwede man siya lahi. This is one good example. The basis of marriage is Adam and Eve. Okay, it's Adam and Eve right here. But let's continue. They said to him, why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to send her away? He said to them, because of the hardness of because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. So Jesus is saying the original intention was not to divorce. But because there is so much problems with sin and etc., therefore, I'm allowing it now. Notice he doesn't say, in the beginning it was like this, therefore it should be. He's saying, in the beginning it was like this, but because of certain situations that happen, hardness of heart, fall, sin, etc., pwede na lang. Okay? Pwede na lang. Now, question. And I say to you, so the question now is, so, unsa man ang possible grounds? Ang tubag ni Jesus, now, this is where it gets back to the question like of the lists. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality and marries another, commits adultery. So just sexual immorality. Now, what is sexual immorality? Adultery?
Yes.
Porn? Flirting? He doesn't say adultery, huh? He says sexual immorality. That's not, the word adultery is not there. And those are two different words. Because sexual immorality in the Greek here is porneia. Not the same Greek word for adultery.
Yeah, he used sexual immorality and adultery in the same sentence, so it's different.
So it's very different. Okay. So notice he's not giving a list. He's not saying except for basta kani. He's saying it has to be so grievous. Okay? And notice abandonment is not here.
Yeah.
So is this a list or is this pointing to the heart? Don't forget the context. The Pharisees are trying to trick him. For any cause. So he's not saying for any cause. He's not saying grabe ka grievous. He's saying look at your heart. You're treating marriage like it's a dua-dua. It has to be so grievous good. Such as. Right, that's the tone. Now, how do we know that? Look at what the disciples said. The disciples said to him, if such is the case of a man with his wife, it's better not to marry. I have to stick. So the disciples are saying, wait. I have to stick with someone for the rest of my life? Unless she does something really, 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 really bad? O di na lang ko eh. Because a lot of them took the view na you can divorce anytime. Kaya napaig imohang dinner. I'm exaggerating the paig dinner, okay? So it's got more to do with nasayop siya og sugo sa mga servants or kanamay nana. But you get the point. Walang malipay divorce. So they took that view. That's why the disciples said, sobra kalisod na. Because it's so easy to just divorce. That's why verse 11 says, not everyone can receive this saying, but only those to whom it is given. There are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men. So the real literal snip. So meaning literally God closed that door. Okay, so it's God who closed the door. And there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. So they decided of themselves. So either they're like that from birth, disabled lang yun sila. There are others, wa sila choice, na persecute, naputlan ang ilaha. Muslims do that until today. And there are those who decide to live a life of celibacy. Kanya-kanya yan. So that's exactly the heart of what Jesus is saying. Kanya-kanya na sa situation ni mo. So it's case to case. But if you decide to get married, don't do it flippantly. It's not a list. It would be so weird if Jesus said, except for adultery, Why? Because, and then muhatag din siya case-to-case example? That doesn't make sense. It's like saying, can I eat bacon today? And then Jesus will say, it's up to you, case to case. If your heart decides you want bacon or vegetables or green leaf or eggs, pero dapat lang karon eggs, ha? So why give the option in the first place? So it doesn't make exegetical sense. So the only way this makes sense, kaning 19 verse 12, is if you interpret verse 9, taking into consideration sexual immorality is not adultery, and then there's abandonment in the other text. And this was a trick question by the Pharisees with the 4 groups. That's how it will make sense. At least that's how I understand it.
In addition po ba, if the text that discusses about divorce is only in the Gospels, ug wala sa New Testament letters, settled naman unta. The thing here, that naman kanang further elaboration from Paul ba, which means that it reinforces David's kanang point nga it's a principle thing based on grounds on principles ba. And then Paul actually elaborated it because that's the purpose of the New Testament, how the gospel is lived, no? Because the gospel was presented in the first four books of the New Testament, and then Paul is actually elaborating it. And not only that, the context of the Hebrew culture is quite different from the Gentile culture that Paul is trying to reach out. And that text actually sa Matthew 19 is not conclusive, or it's not exclusive, because we can see from other text mga sa scripture nga when something is stated nga dili na say nga maura gina siya. One case for example is ang kanang ark ba, the Ark of the Covenant. If you read the first 5 books, first pala makita nimo is ang gibutang sa Ark of the Covenant is only the tablets. Di ba?
Yeah.
If you read it in Exodus or in Leviticus, but when you read it in other books, napaday katong gibutangan po daig mana. And then when you read it in other pagyod is nakita dito nga not only kinang tablets mana, but also katong rod ni Aaron.
Yeah.
But it was if you only can limit yourself to reading it in the book of Exodus, makaingon ka nga awa gilaing sud ang kinang Ark of the Covenant kato yung tablets. So I guess we can learn from that in reading the New Testament ba nga. If you read something like that and then you sing duhar lagi ang gibutang, you're not taking the whole the scripture as a whole. Meaning you're only limiting yourself to that passage of scripture, and then you close your mind nga napaday laing passages that deals with it that would expand your horizon in trying to understand that topic. So
And
siya.
Add Mark 10. Go to Mark 10, verse 11 to 12. Same situation, same event. After Mark 10, I have to go kay magkuyog mi sa ubos. Family time.
Your flesh is calling you. Mark 10. All right.
Yep. Same situation, same question, same people, responded in a different way. So the disciples were freaking out, diba? Lisuda na ay. Verse 10, in the house, the disciples asked him again about this matter. And he said to them, whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. Pause. Diba, if you divorce someone, it means that someone is guilty of something.
Okay.
Okay? So if whoever divorces his wife, so if a man divorces his wife and marries another, he commits adultery against her. But pause. If the wife committed adultery first, so the man divorced the wife, right? And then the man marries someone else, someone new, someone innocent. The man is also guilty of adultery? I thought, according to New Testament ethics, I thought if nag-adultery ang person, pwede siya i-divorce. So free na ka. So suddenly, how come you're not free anymore here? Paul said, and Paul said, the Lord, So what's happening here? Are we now saying na you're free but you're not free? So she committed adultery against you, you divorce her, and now you want to marry someone else and you're committing adultery too? Does it make sense? No. Change the situation for a moment. If a man divorces his wife, kaya napayag ang dinner, and decides to marry another, then he commits adultery against her. You see the gravity? Because again, the Pharisees asked, is it lawful to divorce for any reason? Napayag ang dinner, napayag ang breakfast, napayag ang lunch. So the implication here is that they were talking about it and they understood the context. Nga, that was the situation. Anyone can divorce anyone for whatever reason. And Jesus is saying, no. You divorce someone for any reason, nga dili grievous, and you marry someone else, adultery ka. In the first place, nagminyo-minyo ka diha, wala mo giseryoso.
It makes sense. Wow. Okay.
You guys see it?
Yes.
The context will make sense if you put in that qualification nga for any such reason or grievous.
Yeah.
That's why Paul echoes this sa 1 Corinthians 7. Na if you're unmarried kay nakig-divorce ka tungod lang kay napaig lagi ang dinner, if mo reconcile ka, balik sa katong nagpaig sa imong dinner, kamaw man na muluto sa after a year siguro makat-on man na siya mo prito. That's what Paul is saying. He's saying, you go reconcile for what? Burnt bacon? So mo na.
Okay.
Pero kung gikulaan na ka, ikaw nang gihimog bacon, lain na ng storya.
that context really helps. You know, the like
Yes, context really helps. Good. Oh my goodness.
yeah, because like dude, these statements do not, you know, in and of themselves, they don't qualify things.
Yeah, because a lot of it was understood. Pero when sa Matthew, when the Pharisees asked for any reason, that's bait. So when we read certain things like, and they were trying to trap Jesus, marag nanasad ni sila yung mga so you kind of know specific lagi nga question nga for any reason. And then Jesus gives answers. Why would the Pharisees ask that question? Come on, they knew the law.
May kayo sila sa mga trick questions, no? Pharisees.
Oh,
Sabi nila, maro sila. Mas kamaos, Jesus.
Grabe.
They got checkmate.
Okay,
Yeah.
here's on a tangent na naman, Aya. Like, since we still have you. Kana ba, like, for example, those verses that say, oh, if you do this and that, you commit adultery. So say, for example, let's just put it that way nga, gipadaya niya. So he marries this other person and this time he remains faithful. This time he is good to this second wife or so. So mahog siya nga, what I'm trying to ask is, like, adultery here is just a one-time thing. Like, the act of marrying that person was adultery, but then as, for example, maybe a Christian, like, you would now then be glorifying the Lord by staying in that marriage.
The
No.
second marriage.
The second marriage.
The first marriage, nag-divorce sila tungkol kinapaig ang bacon?
Yeah, let's say. Just for the,
Okay.
theoretical.
That's what makes it very difficult, huh? Because here's the problem, Manggod. The reason for the divorce before, we don't know the situation. We don't know what happened.
Yeah.
So it could have been the paig bacon was the last straw. Now we don't know what the other straws are. Okay. So sa ako, like for example, if a couple comes to the church and the guy confessed, actually, I was married before and we had such a huge problem with our marriage and grabe gito ka toxic. So now, ano. And then I asked, did you ever cheat on her? No. Did you ever beat her up? No. Did she ever do those things to you? No. So what made it toxic? Oh, we were just fighting all the time. There was no peace. We just
There was
fought every day.
proper bacon.
Okay, so what do you fight about? She's like anything and everything, and I just don't understand why. So finally, we couldn't take it. We divorced each other, and we had peace. And then now I'm married. So I know when the Pharisees talk, they make it sound so simplistic. Na paig ang breakfast, but I can't say manggod nga this guy really tried his best to save the marriage. And I also cannot say nga he's making it as an excuse lang. I wouldn't know that. I will leave it up to God. So on a realistic sense, in the real world today, since he's married right now, I'm going to help the guy glorify God in the current marriage because I don't know what happened in the previous marriage. Now, if I were there, if I were counseling them in the first marriage and I know that this guy was making excuses like it's so obvious, I would not recommend him to marry anyone else. So case, that's where it's case to case. I've actually seen that there was a guy in GCF who came to GCF before. Oh, along is Freddie. Freddie knows. Anyway,
Maybe.
so yeah, but there was a guy who came and he was married before and then he got married again. And so I asked him why he got divorced, and his answer before was, it was just so terrible, etc., etc. And I asked, was there adultery? Was there abandonment? And he said, none of those, but we just could not stop fighting about anything or everything to the point that my breathing annoyed her. I'm like,
No.
Poor thing.
like she would be mad at him because she would hear him breathe through his nostrils daw.
Grabe, ka-toxic.
What? Sobra na kayo. And
Why
so,
did they get married in the first place?
now they were very young when they got married. And then,
That's why it's very advisable to know your partner first.
yeah. They were whirlwind romance ba? And then they got married.
Take note ha,
right away.
take note na ha. Take note na ninyo ha.
Agoy.
Especially how they breathe
Yeah.
through their nostrils.
Even snoring can become a very big issue sa marriage.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean you sleep with a person before marriage, ha? Anyway. But going back lagi, that's the I didn't know what to say because I wasn't there. Diba? And so they got married, whirlwind romance, and then they got divorced. And then after 8 years, the guy meets this Christian. Okay, and then 3 more years, they got married. So time niya as a single was 10 years. What can we do? Do we say, you leave that current spouse and go back to your first, be reconciled? Diba? And that's not how it works. That's not real world, and that's not practical. And the Bible doesn't give us like set of rules nga do this, don't do that. The Bible is also very practical in how we are to live life. So we give it to the Lord. Lord, I'm gonna help this guy out with his current marriage na. So mona siya.
It's like you cannot, you can't correct the history by abandoning like the present one or something.
True. We have a missionary friend who went to a Muslim nation. this Muslim guy had 4 wives. Okay, 4 wives. Wife
Oh
number
yeah,
1,
that's the hurt.
arranged marriage. Wife number 2, they really fell in love and he really loves her. Okay. Wife number 3, out of duty kanay utang. The other family had utang, so the family gave him wife
Payment.
number 3 as payment for their utang. Okay. Wife number 4 was he accidentally got her pregnant, so he cheated on the 3 wives with wife number 4.
Mentally.
Yeah. Okay. So now and then my missionary friend goes there, preaches the gospel. The guy gets born again,
Okay.
Mm.
and now his question is, which wife do I stick with?
The current
Arranged
one.
number 1, arranged.
Two.
They're all married. Gyapon, ha?
The current I all married still.
There's no divorce. No divorce happened. He's currently married to all 4.
Yeah.
1,
Hala kalisod.
2 in love,
Two.
debt payment, 4
Ay,
accidental pregnancy.
see, who was it? Was it Jacob who married Leah and Rebecca?
Leah, Rachel.
Rachel, something.
No,
Who was it?
Leah and Rachel. Leah and
Leah,
Rachel.
Rachel,
Right. So,
and the 2 servants.
Concubines.
so hey, be faithful to all of them.
Servants there.
Be faithful to all of them.
But that was the Old Testament, ge. We are now in like the MCT.
I understand, but the thing is, God wasn't upset then.
Okay, there's a cheat answer. There's a cheat answer. Now this is what really happened, ha?
No.
My friend told him to confess to all his wives that he's born again.
Okay.
And then
Wife number 1 left him because of his Christian faith. Wife number 3, utang has been
easier.
paid. Wife number 4 said, I don't want to leave you because you're a Christian, and if the government comes for you, they might come for me. So I will allow leaving you as long as you keep paying for the kids. The only one who stuck with him is wife number 2, who became a Christian also.
Wow, true love.
So, like, you know what
Amazing.
Pang
happened?
Disney.
It's a fairy tale, but it doesn't.
Saying Anna, it makes sense because it follows the 1 Corinthians 7 thing where the unbelievers leave.
Yeah.
That's the easy part. But I guess the question was, as the Christian guy, like, considering nothing changes with the wives, does he have the, like, obligation to be faithful to them?
Here's the thing. If he leaves Manggod wife number 1, he already got the dowry and everything. So all the money is with him. Wife number 1 was not educated.
Wow.
So if he leaves, this wife would not know how to fend for herself. And no Muslim man will marry a woman who's already been married, who's already made kids. So ang ihang resolution ato was, if di gyud sila muhawa, I will support all of them. I will never stop supporting all of them. Pero magpuyo siya one house with wife number 2. But he will provide for everybody. Dato man kini siya agad.
Rachel.
You know, but
Wait,
pero mo lagi.
hindi ko siya Rachel, kaya tagan yung anak si Leia.
Di kay siya man ang true love.
Sad. Pero that's really difficult. That's why we have to really consider the context. And dili siya as simple as Jesus made some lists, just follow those lists. There was an issue that is happening until today. In the Muslim world, they can divorce anyone for anything. And I know because I have a Muslim friend. He's like, yeah, we can do that. I have another Muslim friend nga nahimong Christian. So I asked him straight and he said, yeah, I could have many times in the past, but I just could not. I was like, why did you not? His answer, very simple. Ingon siya, I want more kids because I want my progeny and all of that. It wasn't really love. And then when he became married,
Production.
and then he got married, and then he became Christian, and then he fell in love with his wife after getting born again. It's so funny.
All.
Wow. We can really see God's no ang kanang stories ni Maya ba Christian men who became born again.
Well, that
Amazing.
was funny because he used to be violent towards his wife, huh? And then siya ang na-born again. And then when he finally confessed to his wife, the wife asked, "What did you eat? What happened? How come you suddenly changed? You don't hurt me anymore. You're very respectful."
Burned bacon.
So, ningon siya nga, the truth is, I met Jesus, blah, 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 blah. Ang ending, ningon ang wife niya, funny kayo. And siya,
Jesus.
I don't care about Allah anymore because Allah never changed you for me.
Yeah.
So whoever this Jesus is, teach me.
Yeah.
Wow.
The Christian silang duha. They're now pastors in Iran.
Wow.
So, mona, underground church. But, for mona siya, that's you have to think of the purpose of marriage, Gyud, more than lists and dapat, look at the purpose and see how the heart of God is towards marriage. And then it becomes case to case. You'll begin to understand.
Yeah. That's why it's confusing. Because ganina, diba, I informed you guys nga katong like Christ and the church, ingan na. So like, it wasn't until the whole any reason number okay, now it makes sense nga na I divorce. Yun na ito.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think also it glorifies God when unbelievers look at marriages where the husband beats the wife repeatedly. Is that Christ and the church? Di man. It would be more glorifying to God to show the unbelievers that there's a point where Christ will not take abuse. Jesus will say, "Depart from me, I never knew you." Diba? So that there's also that truth. That not all who say they're married to Christ are married to Christ. There's also that truth.
That really helps.
And, diba? And when someone remarries a quote-unquote better spouse, there's redemption. There's the theme of redemption by Christ. There is the restoration of things that was lost. There is the, now this is what marriage looks like, the eye.
Is that equivalent to like Israel and true Israel?
Huh?
Is that equivalent to like Israel as the people of God and then later on the church?
Something like that. If you want to think of it that way, yes. So, mona siya.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Good kay like a more balanced view bitaw.
Yeah. And there's always this, just in case.
Wow.
Whoever tries,
I think ayaw you mean by that is katong those who were made eunuchs by men.
Yes, very true. Pero mona siya. So, I guess that's it. I have to go, guys. It was a fun Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This aya like
Yeah.
listed for the other people.
Yeah, but suggestion lang, ayaw lang i-share to the world, like sa NCC fam lang siguro.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
listed lang nako. Yeah.
Yeah, listed, yeah. There's a book, I'll send you a link to the book later on. It gives you all those views, exegetes all those verses.
Yes,
Very
please.
nice.
Yes, please.
We appreciate.
And there's actually an article from the kinang Council of Biblical Manhood and Womanhood bitaw. This is a complementary man good nga.
Hindi mo gyapon ng paper book
No, it's from Wayne Grudem. Actually, it was Wayne Grudem who actually kinang change his view nga sa una man is permanence mo sa kaning duha ka buok ang ang basis ba. And then when he tried to exegete man 1 Corinthians 7, he found out and he's trying to connect man what the text and what the kinang the actual situation man kining mga abused wives no. And then he found out sa iyang research nga the 1 Corinthians 7 is actually a text that allows certain certain situations kinang case to case nga basis nga when a spouse was kinang physically abused, that could be a ground for divorce.
Ay,
So it's a good a good article actually that talks the view, but the different view pud ba nga separate dito sa katong uban nga yes, there are other kinang views that doesn't actually kinang limits to lists but principles and katong foundations o kinang purpose of marriage. And one of the things ngayon is katong peace, katong about peace ba. That's why dili siya kinang wa siya ni limit sa katong two reasons lang, but the principle behind it sa text is mo to yang explain. It's a good if you can look at it, pwede rin nyo i-search lang Grudem and kinang grounds for divorce. Pwede rin.
Ito kuya.
Grudem, Wayne Grudem and grounds for divorce. Let me kinang ang link ha. Ako iko ng link sa chat group.
Yeah.
Of the book, ne? Sorry.
It's a kinang it's an article.
Okay.
I think I found it.
Share.
Ana, I share it.
I now believe there are more than two. Like, it's so weird because like, who was it? Si Bokam lagi, kanang, ang iyahang pag-present sa permanence, no, kay iyamang yung gibali, like, from two, hinahinay niya one, and then wala na. You know ba to? And then this guy is like, why I now believe there are more than two. So like, dito na sa just because other directions. Yeah.
Opposite sila.
Like,
Pero, just to be clear lang ha, Grudem is a reform theologian.
yeah.
He's a Calvinist. He's a kinang complementarian. And kung magkuhan ka in terms of kinang theological background, he's very solid, but he struggled with it for several years actually. He struggled with it for several years, and then he finally he studied it kinang further, and then he made research about kinang Paul's use of the language ba, and then that's where he came up with the conclusion yes, there are possibilities for other grounds for divorce, but it's not kinang etched in stone ba, so to speak, because there are principles that needs to be followed about it. So mo to yang argue. And it's very compelling. It's very compelling. Not necessarily everyone should accept it, but it's a kinang different take on kinang ancient text and applied to our situation karon ba.
Dito.
And on a personal note, it sounds very heartless pud kanang sorry girl, minyo naman ka before, stick. Yeah, what about this guy friend of mine and showing interest and I'm very interested and there's really hope for a future of that. No hope for a future. No.
Oh, lang ka kinang sakripisyo na lang ka. Anyway, nabitay kinang redemption afterlife.
Yeah, right.
So on a surface ba, if you're a kinang fundamentalist or kinang puritan nga mindset, yeah, pwede kaya gini. But we are in a different era, and the struggles of Christians before are different from today. And
I
kumbaga
that way before I thought like that's for your sanctification or something. Kind of more living
You get married, man, the sanctification.
If that's your conviction actually if that's your conviction, then go ahead with it. But if you're forced to it because somebody kanang bound your conscience nga ingana gyud ang imong dapat buhaton, murag lahi na po na siyang istorya.
Actually from like maybe diba ganina it was from the kanang kulang bitang understanding of scripture, like not enough context ingana. So like on first reading, that's how I think anyone would take it, I guess. Like if literal lang gyud bitang ang giingon, yan na bitaw. Like
So dana i-white knuckle nimo tanan tawo ana.
yeah.
Yes, wala ka diha. What about
ang ang risk lang pod ani manggod is because when this is taken actually as a kinang a view manggod, it may open a can of can of worms ba. It might be be accused as so pwede na bisag unsa, no? Marabag kanang slippery slope ang accusation magud ani nga case to case bitaw. So ako ning nga fall into ani nga case para makakuha lang kog divorce. That will be the risk of it. And if somebody could play a devil's advocate, so pwede gid nga so kung ang basis is kung walay peace, pwede din ako awayon akong wife, and then we can have divorce. Then I can marry other partner. So that can be taken kinabang to the extreme bitaw nga it would create another problem.
Yeah, but it's ministry is really messy. In the end, God will sort it out. But we do what we can do. We don't try to make it more convenient by just saying basta mo ni and then mo na.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because from experience lang, I know somebody nga there's already a ground for divorce, and that person is already thinking about it. But in the end, that person actually said nga, hey, it's still worth saving for. And that's a very murabag heartwarming nga thought ba nga. Yes, there was already a way out, but still ni stick gyud siya.
Yeah.
Because that person still believes nga it's worth saving for.
Yeah.
There's already a ground, there's already a reason, and only na lang to execute it. But that person did not do it.
Yeah. And daghan couples in ana. So it takes faith, grace, prayer, more good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sige, I gotta go.
All right. That was a good day.
Good day.
Thank you.
Proper recording na.